Hello everybody, this is our second tutorial and today we'll be dealing with stress in Mandarin. I will tell you first how you can make a Mandarin syllable stressed or unstressed. Then I will remind you how to mark degrees of stress in CHIPROT. And finally, we'll discuss a question, what words should be stressed and what words should be unstressed. People who know that Mandarin is a tonal language may wonder, does it also have stress? The answer is yes. Tone and stress live together quite happily within one and the same Mandarin syllable. Speaking of stress, there are two general questions. The first one is how. How can we make a syllable sound stressed or unstressed? And the second question is what? What should be stressed and what should be unstressed? So first question is how. How can we make a Mandarin syllable, in our case, sound stressed or unstressed? As I have already indicated, stress in Mandarin syllables has something to do with the tones. This is just to remind you the 4 tones of Mandarin in their citation forms. And I cannot resist making a note about the third tone. Remember that the third tone is above all a low tone. You should keep this idea in your brain. The final rise is definitely not obligatory, even before a pause. So remember this. There are 2 kinds of Chinese syllables or morphemes. Tonal morphemes, which carry one of the 4 lexical tones. They have a tone mark in a dictionary. And the second group, much smaller, are toneless morphemes. They are pronounced in the neutral tone, and they have no lexical mark, no lexical tone, no tone mark in the dictionary. So first, let us say something about the pronunciation of neutral tone syllables. They are very short. They are always tightly attached to the preceding syllable, and their pitch is dependent on the preceding tonal syllable. Here you have a simple diagram to see where you should pronounce that neutral tone after particular tones. So I will read it for you. Mama, 孩子. This is, I would say, the most difficult one because you should rise, then go down a little bit, and only then you pronounce the neutral tone. So it's not 孩子, but 孩子. Then the third tone, 姥姥, and finally the fourth tone, 爸爸. So the pitch of the neutral tone syllable is dependent on the preceding tonal syllable, and if it's within a utterance, also on its intonation. So some syllables do not have any lexical tone at all, but there are syllables which do have a lexical tone, but they lose it somehow in fluent speech, especially in rapid casual speech. For instance, the personal pronoun 他 in this sentence, 我不认识他, 我不认识他, or 法 in the word 做法, 做法, the tones are gone. Neutralized syllables are pronounced exactly the same as neutral tone syllables. So now let's go back to syllables with tones. How exactly does the cooperation between tone and stress work? We can say with a little bit of humor that tone is a servant of stress. That means that stress and non-stress are chiefly realized by means of tone. Here are 2 basic rules. The more stressed a syllable, the more distinct, clear its tone is. And on the other hand, the less stressed, weaker the syllable, the fainter its tone is. To give you a better idea, I will use a metaphor. So imagine we have a toy balloon with some picture on it, a teddy bear in this case, and that balloon stands for a Mandarin syllable, and that picture stands for a tone contour. If we change stress degrees of the syllable, it's like blowing up or deflating a balloon. Big balloon is a stressed syllable, and a small balloon is an unstressed syllable. So if we have a big balloon, the picture is large, clear, and distinct. If we deflate it a little bit, the picture gets smaller, fainter. And if we continue, there is less and less air. Finally, the picture is just gone. It's invisible. What exactly, if we go through this process, what exactly happens to tones? As the balloon shrinks, syllable duration becomes shorter and tone contour becomes flatter. That means the second tone rise, for instance, gets milder, or the fourth tone fall is also mild. Of course, in spontaneous speech of native speakers, the situation is much more rich, and there are endless modifications of tone contours, expressing various paralinguistic meanings such as anger, joy, fatigue, hesitation, resentment, sadness, or whatever emotion you can think of. Thanks God, tones are elastic. So here is a take-home message for you. Stressed Mandarin syllable has a full tone. It has rather long duration. Its tone contour is very distinct or even blown up. So for instance, the rise of the second tone is quite steep, or the fall of the fourth tone may be quite steep. And the whole syllable is put into a more extreme pitch level. That means the first, second, and fourth tone will be higher, and the third tone, on the contrary, will be lower. Unstressed Mandarin syllable has a weak tone. It has a short duration, flattened tone contour. That means that the second tone rise would be mild, just very mild, and the fourth tone fall would be also flat, like this, mild. Not like this, but like this. Further, the voice keeps around the comfortable mean level. That means the first, second, and fourth tone would be not so high, and the third tone would be not so low. And this is very important. The vowels and consonants of unstressed Mandarin syllable tend to be pronounced in a sloppy way. Because the whole syllable is short, you just don't have time for proper articulation. So they are kind of sloppy, or they may be even swallowed. Not all of them, but some of them. And finally, unstressed Mandarin syllables must be attached to something, to preceding tonal syllable. The weakest kind of unstressed syllables are neutral tone syllables and neutralized syllables. That is those which do not have any lexical tone or no hearable tone. They have, again, very short duration. The vowels and consonants are almost always pronounced in a sloppy way or often swallowed. They are tightly attached to the preceding syllable, and their pitch is dependent, as we saw, on the preceding tonal syllable and intonation. 妈妈，孩子，姥姥，爸爸。Here is one important rule for all unstressed syllables. Unstressed syllables just cannot stand alone because they are so weak. They have to lean on something. An unstressed syllable always has to be attached to something stronger, more stressed. For instance, the preposition 在 in this 在北京, 在北京, or the past position 上 in this 树上, 树上. Let's talk about degrees of stress in CHIPROT. We mentioned it already in the first tutorial, but now we'll go to more detail. Mandarin is not like many other languages. In many languages, we can get along with just 2 degrees of stress, stressed syllables and unstressed syllables. But Mandarin is a tone language, and it somehow needs more degrees, namely 4. At least this is what I establish in CHIPROT. But many linguists do recognize 4 degrees. So in CHIPROT, it's enhanced syllable, normal syllable, weakened syllable, and totally weak syllable. Here is the graphics. Enhanced syllable is in capitals, it's in bold, and it carries a tone mark. Normal syllable is just in bold and has a tone mark. Weakened syllable, which has either a weak tone or totally neutralized tone, is non-bold and it carries a tone mark. And finally, neutral tone syllable, of course, has no tone mark and is non-bold. Here is an important note about the 3rd degree. That is a weakened syllable, which has either a weak tone or completely neutralized tone. If the tone is completely gone or neutralized, such syllable still carries a tone mark in CHIPROT. For instance, 看看，回来，火车站，打不开. Why the tone mark is still there, although you cannot hear any tone? It's because that morpheme still has its underlying phonological tone. So I prefer to mark it. This sentence you have already heard in the tutorial 1, but let's recall it now.
丢了眼镜儿，我怎么办呢？
I lost my glasses, what shall I do? Listen to it once more.
丢了眼镜儿，我怎么办呢？
There are 2 enhanced syllables, 戒 and 半. 3 normal syllables, 丢眼 and then 1 unstressed tonal syllable, 我, and 3 tonal syllables, l, m, and na. Now I will give you examples of normal syllables and weakened syllables so that you can compare their pronunciation. I will explain it according to the particle tones. So first, the tone 1, the first tone. Normal syllable is fairly long and rather high. 哭起来，给妈妈. Weakened syllable, first tone weakened syllable, is rather short and it's not that high. 他来了，他输了. Now the second tone. Normal syllable in the second tone would be fairly long and its rise would be quite steep. 哪里？他来了. But weakened syllable would be shorter and the rise would be mild. 你好，来北京. Now the third tone. Third tone normal syllable is fairly long, almost longest, and it's quite low. 买了，你好. Third tone weakened syllable would be quite short and not that low. 给爸爸，想看看. And finally, the fourth tone, normal syllable would be fairly long and the fall of the fourth tone would be quite steep. 到了，好看. And the fourth tone weakened syllable would be quite short and the fall would be quite mild. 再见，到北京. You can try it yourself. Now the second important question. What should be stressed and what should be unstressed? First, here's this clear case, and this is neutral tone syllables. They are always unstressed by default. It's very simple. you know what it means in practice. Remember, the syllable is very short, it's tightly attached to the preceding tonal syllable, and its pitch is dependent on the preceding tonal syllable and intonation. Here are examples of neutral tone morphemes, actually the most important ones. These are structural particles da da da, for instance, 爸爸的书. Then 3 verb aspect particles 了, 这 and 过, 他走了. Sentence particles such as 么, 呢, 吧, 了, and so on. 你去吧. Then plural suffix 们, 老师们. And finally, second syllable in some dissyllabic words. For instance, 豆腐, 爸爸, 孩子. Okay, so this was the very simple case, stressless, totally stressless neutral tone syllables. But how about stress in tonal morphemes? If a syllable or morpheme or word has a lexical tone, for instance, 口 or 是, it may assume various degrees of stress in fluent speech. It can be either a normal syllable, or enhanced syllable, or weakened syllable. Many, maybe most syllables or words stand in their default form as normal syllables with ordinary full tones. The number of normal syllables or density of normal syllables may vary, and it depends on speech tempo. The faster speech tempo, the less normal syllables and the more weakened syllables. Then speech style, in formal style, we find many normal syllables and not so many weakened syllables. And finally, on speaker's background, what is his or her original dialect? So the speakers of Southern dialects tend to keep tones more often than the speakers, for instance, of Beijing. So here's a short example of a sentence composed of just 3 words. 这是椅子, so 这 and 椅 would be normal syllables. Some syllables or words, not so many, usually just one in the whole utterance, may become enhanced. It happens if they are especially important for the speaker. For instance, if the speaker wishes to contrast some items, such as 我的, 你的, 这是我的, 不是你的. This is mine, it's not yours. And finally, weakened tonal syllables. Some, and in fast speech, even many, tonal syllables or words may become weakened in fluent speech if they are not that important for the message. For instance, function words such as classifiers or prepositions or postpositions. And what does it mean? The tone becomes either weak or even completely neutralized. The syllable is pronounced in the neutral tone. So what syllables or words willingly become weakened on stress? You may be surprised, but there are many of them. For instance, the verb 是, the classifier 个, personal pronoun 他, 我, 你, 他, all 3 of them, the postposition 上, and many, many others. Let us call them commonly weakened morphemes. It's very good to remember this group of words. Why? If you always pronounce these words with full tones, in most contexts, it may sound awkward, unnatural, and accented. And this is something you may not want. For instance, 这是书, it's no good. 这是书, it's better. 这个人, no good. 这个人, better. I will give you examples of commonly weakened morphemes in the next tutorial. So finally, I will give you some example sentences, and please pay attention to various degrees of stress. So where's that pen of yours?
你的那支钢笔在哪儿？
Put it louder.
你的那支钢笔在哪儿？
Once more.
你的那支钢笔在哪儿？
So it's quite clear that nar is the most prominent syllable or word. It's enhanced. Why? Because it's a question word. It's a very important word in this utterance. Then 知 is a weakened syllable. Why? Because this is just a classifier and it does not deserve to be pronounced fully or even stressed. Then B is also a weakened syllable. This is something what I call switched stress pattern, because in this very context, you would not say 钢笔, but 钢笔在哪儿? And finally, the preposition 在 is also weakened because it is just a preposition. You may check it once more.
你的那支钢笔在哪儿？
Okay, some more examples. This is a dialogue about fish, eating fish.
他喜欢吃鱼吗？
The most prominent is, of course, that fish.
他喜欢吃鱼吗？
While 吃 is pretty weak. 吃鱼吗? This is quite common that if a verb is followed by an object, the verb is weaker. And here is the answer.
他喜欢吃鱼，他不喜欢吃肉。
So here the most prominent is 肉.
他喜欢吃鱼，他不喜欢吃肉。
You can imagine if the speaker would say 他喜欢吃鱼, it would sound awkward. It must be weaker in this context. Okay, so that's all for today and see you next time. Thank you for attention. Bye-bye.